Hello, everyone, and welcome to Weekly Manga Recap for July the 26th of 2018. And wrapping up this month, Chris, we are going to be talking to sports manga. Hooray.
Damn straight we are. Didn't go the way I wanted to.
See, Chris is demonstrating the newest sport that we have just invented, double hat stack.
I'm a hat stacker now, yeah. So, I got it.
No, he is to stack the hats as high as possible. Then,
I don't have any more hats near me.
When they're on the verge of collapsing, then you have to fling them as hard as you can.
Yeah.
And you're judged based on height and on distance.
And flavor. So when I do it, I'm like, devil be gone! You're supposed to go that way.
The more colorful hats you have, the more flamboyant your gestures. Yeah. It's very difficult to balance all three.
Absolutely. But we do what we can. We have pride in our sport.
Mm. You gotta have that unflappable spirit that tells you that no matter how plain you were born, you too can be a super flamboyant hat.
All you need to do is put enormous, unwieldy, giant, busy hats on, and you too
exactly
can feel like you were born special.
Right, that's how people know who you are, right, Chris? Because it's fuzzy hats.
Exactly. That it is ironically how I got to be known for quite a while.
So do we want to just jump right into this recommendation that we took, or is there something else that we need to discuss?
Do we need to address why, for those watching video-wise, you have a new place behind you?
So Nicole and I have moved in together officially. So this is Nick's new apartment. This is the room that you guys are probably going to be seeing basically permanently for the considerably near future. We've got a lot of stuff yet to unpack, but things are going well now. Now I just have to finish cleaning my old place so that I can actually turn the keys. I hardly did any living in it. How is it so dirty? I just kept on going out to hang out at her place anyway. That's why moving in wasn't such a big step.
And yet somehow, you made it a mess. You destroyed your old place.
Yep.
Much like Hinomaru destroys the competition in this upcoming sports manga about sumo.
Yes, he does. I guess we should make a note that if anyone was reading this along with us, if anyone is curious about this after we're done discussing it, Hinomaru Zumou is getting a anime series coming out in this October, so a few short months away. So, and I am actually kind of curious to see what they do with some parts of it. There are some series where it's like, oh, that would be cool to see it animated, and then there are some series where they greatly let you down and disappoint you whenever they animate it. I Show 21. So
it oftentimes falls a lot on the studio that makes it and what the ambition is with that series. So, with My Hero, they were like, let's give it to a studio that's going to put a shit ton of money into this. And then others, they're just like, World Trigger, they're like, take your anime, you peasants. Make something adorable with this.
How long can we hold on this steady shot of a character just talking directly to the camera while nothing but their lips move? So Hinomaru Zumou is a sumo wrestling series that follows a character named Hinomaru Ushio. So hence Hinomaru Sumo. I don't know why there's the zoo. I don't really get it.
I haven't quite gotten that one.
And his dream, his ambition of becoming Yokozuna, which is not the wrestler,
who is not Japanese, by the way, in case you didn't know this. This quote unquote fun fact. WWE was very racist and just very racist. You're Polynesian enough.
It's expected nobody to notice, and apparently nobody did. Yokozuna is the highest title in sumo. It's a very prestigious title that is held for life once it is earned. And it is Hinomaru's dream to be the first Japanese Yokozuna in many years. which in fact there is actually now a Japanese Yokozuna.
Yay.
Yeah. He earned the title like a year and a half ago. And then he got injured immediately after proving how awesome he was, and has not really been doing so well since. I had heard a story about around the time that he became Yokozuna, and then I followed up on it because I was reminded of it reading this series amazingly. So, the biggest obstacle standing in Hinomaru's way of achieving his dream is himself, because he has a short stature. He is literally less than 5 feet tall at the age of 15 or 16 or something like that. So he is in high school. He wants to join the sumo club so that he can take steps towards achieving his eventual dream of becoming Yokozuna. And the first step in that is to conquer high school sumo. But he's short. That's the big thing that he's got to overcome. There is no weight limit in sumo wrestling. It's just completely open weight. That's why, sumo wrestlers are so absolutely massive, is because they could be as heavy as they want to be in order to compete. And so Hinomaru, who just is going to naturally be smaller than any opponent that he goes up against, has to overcome that. He has incredibly powerful spirit. And he has spent years dedicated training his body to make it as tough and muscular as possible. So he is not giving up on this. And that's basically the starting point. And in the first big stretch of the series, Hinomaru, gathers some teammates together. Very sports series kind of way, where each of them has some sort of special skill where you look at them and you don't immediately think, oh yeah, they would be a sumo wrestler, but they've got some sort of skill or technique that they are already good at, which then allows them to be a specialized combatant in the world of sumo. One of the first characters that he encounters is this bully named Yuma, who is trained in karate. So he becomes a specialized striker after he turns over a new leaf and joins the sumo club. He meets a character who he wants to be an MMA combatant. He's this big wrestling guy. He knows a lot of amateur and professional wrestling stuff, so that gets incorporated into his style and stuff like that. Which is what I dig about sports manga a lot. We're going to have this very bizarre sort of character that you wouldn't think would be good at this sport, but they're really good at this one aspect of it, which allows them to compete in that world.
I'll admit, I didn't know quite as much about the rules of sumo beforehand. I'd always kind of vaguely knew what it was about, and I knew there was a lot of like slapping going on, and it was about trying to push your opponent and toss them out of the ring. But I never really realized that beyond that and like sort of the rules to how you lose, there's not that many sort of rules. Like I didn't realize it was like you could just beat the shit out of your opponent, like whatever it takes to knock them down, more or less. I was like, shit. So it's kind of cool seeing that they have like a cast characters that kind of take different strokes to how they want to embody that their sort of way of victory in this. It's not all like five guys who are like, this is how I push.
Mm-hmm. And that distinction really does help it to elevate the series, because you've got to have that. You got to have that variety to your series where each opponent has brings something different to the table, and each different member of the protagonist team brings something different to the table. It's one of the reasons why Hajime no Ippo has been able to last as long as it has, is because it's not just two guys go in and they go boom, boom, boom. They do things differently, and some of them are very colorful about it. I don't know. I guess we can talk a little bit about some of the characters in it.
Well, let's just mention it's a sports series, so it follows what is pretty standard for sports series at this point. It starts with a team that has some difficulty getting together. Not every series is identical in this way, but they need to have some kind of trouble putting themselves together. In this case, it's the fact that the school they're going to has essentially no sumo club. It's got one member, so they need to get members together, then they need to get 5 members together, and then they need to kind of get themselves together enough to make it to the next levels of the tournament, get to nationals, continue on from there. And then it does sort of follow what a lot of plots do, where it's like, hey, we got this upcoming tournament. Hey, we have third-year members. This is their last shot to do it. Hey, here are our rivals. Here are our kind of friendlier rivals. Here are the outright assholes we'll have to face later on. And it goes through there. The only real different training arcs mixed in between. The only real difference I would say between there is because sumo is ultimately a one-on-one sport, and it's done in teams. There's an odd mixture of focusing on the team and then being like, oh, but this is really just about Hinomaru, so let's kind of focus on his opponents, his elements, and focus in on that. In the interest of full disclosure, I read about half of the series that we read to this point because I didn't feel right reading the whole thing. I'd kind of be interested to see if the series ever got like the Haikyuu treatment where it gets its own official release or anything like that. So I kind of held off on that. And also because if there is an anime, I would be kind of curious to see there's stuff out there to still discover possibly later on. So I didn't get to the point in the series where they actually do like a full time skip and kind of shift the focus of the series completely. But the parts I did get through when it was a tournament felt a lot like the standard shonen fare. But I will note the biggest thing that was missing for me was interactions between the characters. There's very, very little of the cast actually kind of interacting with each other in a non-dramatic fashion at any point. I could think of like maybe one, possibly two moments where they actually have a moment where the cast just hangs out at a place and they get to bounce off each other. They go to an all-you-can-eat buffet, and there's a little bit there. But look, compared to a series like Haikyuu or Ice Shield 21 or other series where the cast is constantly bouncing off each other, it was a little distracting to be like, oh, these guys like just never talk to each other. Like, it's hard to really grasp their personality. Like, I think you were supposed to get that Chihiro and Yuma were supposed to have like a Zoro Sanji like rivalry, but I never really got that impression. A lot,
yeah.
I never got that impression, so I don't.
It's well, and then there's to give a little bit of context too. This is one of the things that happens that really pissed me off. Kei Mitsuhashi, the fifth member of the team. So at the very start of the series, you've got Hinomaru, and then he quickly meets the sole member and captain of the club, Ozeki, who's this very Kurita kind of character. Very big, very large, and has a very round, chubby, kind face. But
very
then
gentle spirit, yeah.
He can get really fired up, and then he gets Funaraba and all that stuff. But he's very much the Kurita of the team. And you've got Yuma, who was a bully. He would bully Ozeki around. Hinomaru beat him, and so Yuma got inspired to turn over a new leaf and be a better person and stuff. He joins the sumo club. Then they need to get 5 members, or the team's going to be disbanded. So they're trying desperately to recruit people. Hinomaru ends up by chance encountering Chihiro, who is this amateur wrestling, MMA, professional wrestling. He does all forms of combat sports stuff. And Hinomaru has a contest with him where he's like, I will follow the rules of sumo. You can follow the rules of amateur wrestling. So if you can just get me to touch the ground with my hands, if you can knock me down even once, if you can force me out of the ring, you have all those means of defeating you, whereas I actually have to get you to fall on your back for, a couple of seconds in order to defeat you, because amateur wrestling, it's a lot more stamina based, more drawn out in that way. And Hinomaru beats him still. And so from that, he's like, wow, yeah, I get it. Sumo wrestling is actually really amazing. And so he joins the team. They had that whole long, mini arc. And then they're like, oh, but we only got 4 members. And then this little kid named Kei Mitsuhashi just shows up. He's like, I'd like to join the team too. Like, yay, we got a 5th member.
5 team members.
It's like there was that. I can't help but see the parallels between this and Ice Shield 21, especially in terms of like the multiple recruitment drive that they have early on in the series. And when you think about, they had the whole thing in Ice Shield 21 where new members had to, carry ice up the tower. And, so you got to see the different members of the team struggling in order to do it. And so you had Komusubi, He just, gets a big old load of ice and he carries it up and he ends up pissing off Jumanji and the rest. And so they end up inadvertently passing it just because they wanted to show him up. And then you've got Yukimitsu, who is, going behind everyone, and he's desperately trying to join the team by carrying all this ice up because he can't help it. He's got to have a whole ton of ice or else he's never going to make it up to the top of the tower. And he finally makes it up there. And Hiruma is like, throws in a couple of cubes of ice. Like, oh, hey, you passed. You saw all the members, in particular, the two new members, struggling in order to reach up there. Whereas in this one, you have this whole thing dedicated to one member who's going to be, your big idiot with a lot of talent on the team. And then you're going to have essentially your Yukimitsu, the weakest member of the team who doesn't have natural talent. He doesn't have the body type for it. And he just shows up. And there's no focus on anything about him up to that point. There's no, you
don't see him in the crowd or anything.
If he had been showing up in the crowd, wow, that's amazing. You'd cut to him multiple times and it'd be perfectly fine. But no, it's the first time you see a hint of him. And you're just like, I want to join the team. Yay, we have 5 members. So
I'll note, to the point that I got to, whatever his name is, I don't even remember. Okay. Never had an actual victory at all. I'm assuming there is some payoff for that. Nick?
Eventually.
Okay. So I'll note that he was definitely my least favorite member of the group in the fact that, as you mentioned, he's very much like the Yukimitsu, but whereas Yukimitsu was one of my favorite characters of all time and all manga period, he didn't strike the same chord with me because whereas Yukimitsu was all about holy shit, this guy is incredible. He's trying so hard, and the heartbreaking defeats he suffers every time, no matter how hard he works, is what kind of makes him admirable. In this, it's kind of just all right, it's K's turn. Boom, he lost. And then you just keep cutting. And every time they'll be next time. There's 4 matches in a row where he's just go, push, boom, done. It's over. Or they'll make a big deal. He's I jumped around you. The guy's boom, and just knocks him down. And you're this is boring.
My legs hurt now.
And I get they're trying to push forward this thing. They're hey, you have a small body. You aren't in any good shape. Sumo is a tough world, and it's going to be difficult. And you could think all right, this is going to be a slow burn to kind of get to that point. But there's no character to this kid. He is just Yukimitsu in principle. It's not as though he has an admirable personality. It's not he has Yukimitsu's thing where he's I've spent my entire life studying. I want to know what it's like to participate.
Part of the team, a part of the club. Yeah.
I want to know that feeling. He's there, and he's I was short, and I was inspired by Hinomaru, who's also short, to not be lame, and that's it, and that's not a bad thing. And he's failing spectacular. He's the lamest character by far.
I will prove to Hinomaru that I can. I'm so cool now.
So, if you say that there's a payoff eventually, then that's great. I assume there would be. There's also technically a quote unquote 6th member that they also kind of hype up for a little bit. There's a guy who's basically he has lung issues, so he's maybe the best sumo character wrestler on the team, but his stamina is so limited he can only do 20 seconds before he taps out completely and potentially would die. So it would have been I wish we could have found a way to make that character more versatile and interesting as that 5th spot than this character who constantly gets swatted around but is still one of the main 5 members of the team. I don't know, it was a weird sort of angle there.
I think that it's one of those things about the series is that there are some characters where it literally just does not know how to handle them. And I think that K was probably just primarily there just to have a weak member of the team that is there instead of Kuze. Or not Kuze. Oh gosh, what is his name? Suji? I think it's Suji. Kirihito.
The guy with the glasses?
Yeah, guy with glasses. Hinomaru's old friend. It is Kirihito. All right, got it.
Were you fucking flabbergasted and confused when he showed up at the end of a chapter it was supposed to be a huge deal?
No.
Okay. I was...
Because I figured it was someone from Hinomaru's past.
Okay. So. Well, they ended that chapter in a way where you're supposed to be holy shit, look at this guy's here. And I was am I forgetting somebody? Am I really bad at this?
The character designs seem to be pretty distinct from each other. I don't think I'm confusing him for someone else.
So I want to note two things. I think there is a really interesting dichotomy of really interesting characters to sort of meh characters in this series.
Yes.
And we talked about one of the meh ones. I'll note one of the other ones that doesn't work for me is unfortunately the main character.
Yep.
But the one I love is Yuma, who is this...
Yeah.
And of course I like him because he's the Chad of this series. He seems super cool and he loses all the fucking time. But they make a big deal like, one day he'll be stronger. And I'm like, I can't wait for this. And he keeps losing. But he has this interesting...
It's like he's got the Yukimitsu deal, honestly.
And they put this interesting, like almost more nuance than I was expecting drama on him. Because he was the bully that basically kicked Ozeki out of their spot when he first got to the school. And has essentially prevented him from having any kind of real club membership for about 3 years until Hinomaru shows up. And then he joins the club, and he does it partially kind of out of guilt and out of this like desire to see true strength. And the entire time he's in the club, he's constantly suffering from this guilt of what he's taken. And it gets worse as the series goes on, because as he finds he loves sumo more and more, he's realizing more and more about what he took from Ozeki, and it becomes this big kind of building block of this character. It's why he continues to struggle, is because he's like, I need to return what I've taken from these guys. And then it becomes a conflict where they're like, you're thinking too much in the fight, you're not focused on the fight itself, you need to stop thinking. And then he has this big like kind of heart-to-heart conversation with Ozeki about it, where he kind of gets over it. And he's this great character. His sister's awesome too, because she starts off as like this like kind of interesting. She's like the unofficial club manager, but she just hates sumo, and she shows up just out of obligation for her brother, and then like a morbid interest in it, and eventually kind of comes around. But it's kind of nice having sort of like a bitchy like club manager character. Like it's not
Rain is a fun character. Yeah.
She's not like the normal sweet innocent like studious one. She's kind of
I'll be like, supportive of you.
She's like, oh my god, you're all so lame.
Oh my god, your loincloths make you look awful. Which, by the way, they do. They keep on making a big deal about the mawashi, the loincloth, which is it's a very important aspect of sumo. It is a traditional garb. It demonstrates, it's like, I have entered the ring with no weapons. That's why I'm only wearing this. But everyone keeps on, like, the attention that gets drawn to the butt in this series. Like, I know it's going to make me sound immature here, but there is so much man ass in this series. And it's not the fact that it's there. It's going to happen in a sumo series. You're going to see muscly butt. But, for example, when Kei is idolizing Hinomaru and he talks about how awesome Hinomaru looks with his strong back wearing only a loincloth, and then the freaking muscly man ass is very prominent in the panel where Hinomaru is just supposed to be looking cool. And they have like Chihiro like farts while he's wearing one. And I don't know, like there is so much weirdness around the way that the butt is portrayed in this series. It was very off-putting whenever it came up, because it's like, look, I don't care how much emphasis you put on the tradition and pride and such of the sport. If you keep on talking about, it's like, wearing only a loincloth is so cool. It's like, no, it's not. It's not. It looks awful the way you draw it.
I didn't have much of a mind about that, but
anyway,
Nick's butt phobia strikes again.
Anyway, so yeah, Reina is very upset that her brother has not only joined a sport that she thinks looks really gross and uncool, but the fact that he keeps like getting his ass kicked, because now he looks, like a loser. And she's very upset about that, but she keeps on showing up in support of him anyway. So. Yeah,
it's a cool dynamic that I was glad to see, because it's different from what we normally kind of get. And there's amazing points with Yuma's character. I think I said in the Discord, I think it's the only real pull I had from this series. But there's an amazing moment that happens. Basically, they're in the newcomers tournament, and there's this big deal that overwhelming new character has shown up, like the son of the former Yokozuna and the guy who trained Hinomaru.
Yokozuna Jr. because he's just like his super awesome dad.
Yeah, and he has this big thing where he shows up. He beats Chiharu. Is that what it is? Whatever. He beats the wrestler guy. Yeah, he beats him. Then has a match against Yuma, and Yuma's not even as good as those guys. And there's just this great moment, though, where he realizes this guy isn't even looking at him anymore. He's already kind of focused on his next match. And it just becomes this battle for Yuma to get this guy's attention. And he has this sort of amazing thing where he finally gets forward with this big smack. He's just like, I don't care what you fucking do. I'm going to make you look at me. And hits him with like this big attack that actually finally draws the guy's attention. And even though he loses right after, it's kind of a cool moment of respect. Like, hey, for just a moment, Yuma was able to get the better hand of a guy who's considered a national treasure. And maybe if he were a better sumo wrestler, he could have actually like parlayed that into a victory. Who knows? You know, that sort of deal. And it's like, cool. Glad to have it. It's my favorite moment of the series that I had read.
Yeah, there's a cool follow-up on that too, because he loses and he's just be like, fuck! And everyone's like, hey, have some respect. But all the people in the crowd are like, how can he even like be frustrated? Doesn't he realize how much better than him this guy is? He shouldn't even be frustrated. He should just accept that this guy is better. But because he actually believes that he should have done better and he should have been had a chance of defeating this guy, it shows his drive to succeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I love those moments. But the problem I have with this series is honestly a lot of it falls into the main character because this is his story. You know, his name's on the front. He's
so boring.
I don't know if it's us to say that he's boring, but he has nothing. He has nothing to him outside of like, I love sumo and I'm short, but I'm not going to let that stop me. And that could be fine. But there's nothing. If you ask me to describe his personality without talking about sumo, I'd be like, I guess he's anti-fun. Like he's very like rigid to his diet and exercise, and that's about it. Like you think about like Haikyuu, and you're like, oh well, Hinata's a big dumb idiot. He's fucking stupid, and you know he's very goofball. He's overwhelming with energy. You're like, okay, there's that to like make a character out of when he's not just thinking about the actual sport. But with this, like Hinomaru has nothing really going on. And I'll admit, I was really into him in the first chapter because they play into this idea of like, oh, he competes because he wants to prove to his dead mom who apologized to him on her deathbed that she was sorry that she cursed him with such a small body. He's like, no, I'm gonna become Yokozuna with this body. Thank you for this. And that's a great moment, but it gets lost in the fact that we're constantly seeing him fight, like constantly, and it's not a particularly like I guess because sumo's not a very long sport, matches aren't very long, so there's only like maybe like 2 to 3 chapters per fight at most. So you get a lot of them, and it's almost all Hinomaru, and it just kind of gets boring after a while because there's almost no downtime to find for these characters outside of fighting, and I just kind of got bored of it after a bit.
I wrote a note down. Let me see if I can get it.
Next, like the butts scare me. Hold on, wait. Next one.
Let's see here. Hinomaru is too short. Is the Asta has no magic of Hinomaru Zumou. They bring it up so much. He's too small. He's too short. He doesn't have the build of a sumo wrestler, but he succeeds anyway. Mm. And the thing about it is that he doesn't even come across as a believable like underdog because he beats so many people. Like the only people he actually loses to are people who are just monstrous and are just better than him at that moment. And then later on, it's so that he could beat them again later. It kind of negates its own point to say that it's actually a disadvantage when he's just so good that he beats them anyway. You know, it's a deceptive appearance more than it actually is a handicap for him.
It's a thing where, you know, this tends to be sort of the attitude when they do a sports series. And oftentimes it's this exact thing where they're like, oh, the main character wants to be like, has tons of passion for the sport, but they're too short. And whereas Haikyuu was like, hey, you're really short, but you have incredible jumping skills. So we're going to find a way to take advantage of that most of all. Or I Shield 21 were like, hey, you're short, but you're stupidly fast. So let's take advantage of just that. This one doesn't have the ability to be like, this is the one thing he can be good at despite his stature. It's just like he's trained his body to a point where he's made the most of it despite that, and he just needs to like refine technique, and then after that he could be great. It's fine. It's just maybe, and this is partially because I'm not a huge fan, like I don't know a lot about sumo. It's tough to really tell what is supposed to be the specifically good strength he has when it comes to sumo beyond like he just wants it more, which is what it feels like it comes down to a lot of the time.
He's too much. I mean, he's specifically described as having a very traditional style, associated with the masters of sumo, with the yokozunas. People are like, oh yeah, he's got that yokozuna pride. He's got the very direct method of dealing with stuff. He approaches sumo the way that you would expect a normal sumo wrestler to approach it, with focusing on overwhelming power and throwing and all that stuff. He's the most well-rounded member of his team. And they make a big point of that pretty early on because he goes up against another smaller competitor who basically had to give up on that very direct approach to sumo because of his small build. And so he has to do this other stuff based on agility and trickery in order to get the one up on larger opponents. And then Hinomaru beats him immediately and is like, nope, Hinomaru's right in order to take this direct approach. So again, it does not feel like it should as an actual disadvantage. As to what you said in terms of like you can't really imagine him separate from sumo, I think that's about right. Like he's just a shonen protagonist, He's got that dream and he's got to go for it, and he's going to do it with a big old confident grin on his face, and that's about it.
Like, so I'll note something. They make a point, and it's this weirdly like small point. Like, I remember a whole chapter being dedicated to this in Ice Shield 21, but the point comes where they're like, oh shit, how's everybody's exams? And they're like, oh hey, Yuma's one of the smartest kids in the entire class. You're like, oh wow, I wouldn't have thought of that. And they're like, oh hey, I forget what Ozeki was, but he was good too.
He was average.
And then they touch upon Chihiro, and they're like, oh, he's an idiot.
Big ol' idiot.
He's almost last in the class. And then they also take an extra shot at the fucking little kid where he's like, oh, he sucks too. He's not even smart. Look at this stupid small idiot. But then they go to Hinomaru, and they're like, oh, he's actually really good. He's actually really, really smart because he refuses to let his studies interfere with sumo, so he takes them just as diligently as everything else. I'm like, fuck. Can't this guy have something he's not good at? Like, they make a big point.
Fucking everyone was an idiot in the Devil Bats except for 3 or 4 members.
It was like Jumanji, Haruma, Yukimitsu, and Musashi, I think. They were like those 4 smart ones, and everyone else was just like, what? Oh god! We're all gonna be expelled!
Well, and Memori.
Yeah.
But because Suzuna was an idiot too.
But like, I enjoyed that to like a really... I enjoyed that chapter a lot because it showed you like this range here. And this one could have been that way, but when it's like, oh no, the only idiot on the team is the guy who we're kind of blowing up to be an idiot more than he really is, because he doesn't feel that stupid. Like, it only really comes out, I guess, in the extent in which they need a joke when it comes up every so often. But would have been like, why couldn't we just be like, oh, Hinomaru's not super smart either, or something like that, or maybe he's average in that, instead of being like, well, he takes this just diligently. I'm like, fuck.
He's like 21st in the class. Like, this guy who is training seemingly on a constant basis, slamming his head into a metal pole, doing all this stuff. He has given himself massive body scars all the fuck over from how hard he has trained his body. How the hell does this guy have the time to study anything?
I don't know. I appreciate parts of it. I appreciate parts of Hinomaru's character, but it just gets so tiresome after a while when he's the only character who gets a focus. And what I'm reading from the time skip, he's the only character from that core group of characters who actually looks like we continue to follow. It looks like everyone else kind of stops because it jumps to post-high school.
And he looks so stupid when he does, too, by the way. He looks so stupid after the time skip. His face does not suit like the style that they go with him. He just looks so dumb. I hate Hinomaru. I think the series is fine. But I just think that he's so boring. Literally every other character in the series is more interesting than him.
Ouch. I'll note that I don't hate, because I feel we've been very negative recently, and I will note that I did not come away from the series with a negative impression. I enjoyed this series. I thought the series was fine. I thought it was fun. There are some really cool matchups in it. And as I said, because it's kind of a short sport per se, you don't get caught in that point where you're like stuck in a match for a really long time. And it's also a decisive sort of sport. So like you can get those moments where you can get a 180-degree turnabout immediately. And those are great to have. Like those narratively are just super satisfying. I liked some of the characters from it. I liked some of the like relationships and dynamics they set up were like really, really interesting. But, you know, there is problems to it that make it less enjoyable. Like if I were to say, like, do I enjoy this or Haikyuu much more? I'd hands down say Haikyuu. I think Haikyuu is just a stronger series overall. But for a series about like a sport I know nothing about, I think this was really, really fun. It was cool to learn about sumo this way. There are some interesting concepts they throw in there. I do want to note something though. So there's the preparation for nationals they're preparing to do. And Hinomaru goes to train with this guy who was a former Yokozuna himself, and he has like he's trained several Yokozuna since then. And they make a big thing because like Hinomaru has this 3 technique sort of twist throw thing that he does. It's like a 3-point hold or something like that. And it's like it's been able to beat everybody, but once someone's seen it, they can counter it because they know its fragility. So a big point is made of this guy being like, hey, I'm training you so that you can use that move as a finisher. And he makes this thing where he's like, I'm going to give you 100 yen and you need to make me whatever dish in 30 minutes. And everyone's like, what is this riddle? How could this possibly be my training? The end of it that comes down is like, don't think directly, like think outside the box. That was his grand piece of wisdom, was like, you don't need to think in a 1-to-1 direction. And you're like, this feels like a really roundabout way to have just said like, why don't you try doing something different and see if that works? Because that's essentially what he does. It's like the big revelation. And he's like, wow, you're so wise. One guy's just like, yeah, and I got a shit ton of curry for $1. It all sucked, but I did it.
I got gruel. There was so much gruel I could get for $1.
If I were to give it a recommendation, I would say if you're into sports series, super fun. If you like sports series about predominantly male characters who are almost completely naked all the time and have mostly giant musculature, which is a real thing. What was it? Prince of Tennis made itself pretty popular based off of just having sweaty dudes around.
Very different body types from Prince of Tennis, though. Let's be clear on that.
That's true. But if those are things you're kind of interested in, I think you definitely would not be wrong to give Hinomaru Zumou a check. And if this is something that you'd really like to read, maybe this is something to also push out there towards, Viz Media and be like, hey, can we ever get any like chapters of this or something like that? Because was this around when they were doing jump starts?
I don't know. It would have been, I think it would have been a little bit before. Because this came out right around the time that My Hero Academia did.
Okay.
That's when it started.
Then it would have been before they did Jumpstart, son.
It's been running for about 4 years.
Okay, yeah.
I would say that if you are into combat sports manga, to give it a try, if you like, MMA and boxing and wrestling kind of series, to give it a try. I think that there are definitely parts of it that does do very well. Some of the matches are really cool. But yeah, I think it does come down to like how likable the characters are. And that is going to be a lot more of a subjective thing, I think, for some people. But yeah, for you and me personally, I just hate Hinomaru. And that's a real problem when he's front and center in the series.
When he's the main dude, yeah.
Especially because he does take predominance over all the other characters, like to a great extent. Like he is very much like you can't just ignore him. He is more prominent than Echizen is in Prince of Tennis. I don't dislike him nearly as much as I hate Echizen. So it wasn't really a problem for me to get through the parts of the series that I did. But if you have a problem with him, then I think that it might be very difficult for you to get through this series, even if you like the other characters. But yeah, as I said before, if you want to check out an anime version, it'll be coming out in October. And hey, maybe it'll be better than this too.
Yep.
That said, let's do the recap portion of Weekly Manga Recap, which fortunately we don't have any jump starts or anything. I guess we do have
a Shokugeki No Sanji.
I think that we'll do a little look into that. I think we'll do that.
Is it more fitting to do it after Food Wars or after One Piece?
I think that it will actually. Yeah, let's do that. Let's after we do My Hero Academia, let's jump ahead to Eden Zero, and then we'll do both of the Food Wars things back to back. All right. Speaking of My Hero Academia, is where we're starting off the recap portion of Weekly Manga Recap with number 190. Is that a 1 or a 7? 197. Dobby, Hawks, Endeavor.
It's almost as though Horikoshi got to the end there, like, what's the chapter? He's like,
something with Dobby, Hawks, and Endeavor.
The guy was like, got it. He's like, oh, he wants to come up with something.
They just like, put they were like insert something about Dobby, Hawks, and Endeavor, and put it on a post-it note on the page. They're like, you got it, Horikoshi Sensei.
I read you loud and clear.
So Dobby has shown up after Endeavor, with the help of Hawks, has managed to defeat the new special breed of Nomu. Dobby then kind of does this with his hands like he's a puppet master.
I think that's just a freestyle. He's like, wicka, I'm Dobby.
League of Villains, yo.
Yeah.
It's really hard to rap with my mouth stitched like this. Ow.
It all hurts.
Ow, cause of pain. Oh, the skin grafts.
Why did I do this to myself?
He immediately summons a circle of fire around the three of them, cutting them off from everyone else. And everyone's like, oh, wait a minute, this is blue fire. That's not from Endeavor. And one of the other heroes standing next to him says, it's too intense, man. Okay.
I mean, that's his robot, like his superhero catchphrase. He's like, I'm the man, dude.
The news chopper can still see them from above, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's Dobby of the League of Villains," which of course everyone can see on TV. So Todoroki is like, "Oh wait, that guy." And Hawks tries to assist Endeavor, who is just collapsing at this point, has no energy left, and he says, "I don't really have much left. I've got a few small feathers, but I can at least buy us time." And Dobby's like, oh, come on. I couldn't possibly beat the two top heroes, especially against the two top dudes already beat up and bloodied. Two top dudes. It sounds like a 90s tag team name or something like that. The two top dudes.
For a moment, I was like, was that what Triple H and Stone Cold's tag team was? And they were the two-man power trip.
Oh, sure. Well, do you remember what Shawn Michaels and Diesel were called? Two dudes with attitude.
Oof.
It was so lame. That's like 93 for you, though. So, fortunately, though, as Dobby rushes in with his hands coated in fire, all of a sudden, Mirko comes springing onto the scene and lands between them with a big old stomp. And she says, I saw the news and came hopping. I do kind of love her. And she takes this very dramatic landing pose and says, you're with the League? Your butt's about to get kicked. This really is just like the character you would play, I feel like, Chris.
Me? I mean, yeah, like, just
jump on his thing. Like, I'm going to kick your butt.
Lola Bunny, but jacked? Yeah, sure. I'm all about this. This is if I could create a character, yes, this is what it is.
Low lot of muscles bunny. So, Dobby calls out for Ujiko, and the same kind of slime that teleported the League of Villains away when they had been nearly captured by All Might and the other heroes, surrounds him, comes out of his mouth, and starts to take him away. And he, gets his closing lines. And of course, as he's leaving, so he mocks Endeavor and says, "Keep doing your thing and don't go dying on me, NG Todoroki." And he vanishes right before Mirko can kick him in the face. The Nomu, of course, goes with him. And the day is saved, but things, of course, end on a very sour note there. And the crowd's like, "Yay, Endeavor and Hawks, you protected us, you won, our new top hero, woo!" And then Endeavor passes out because, look at him. He's been through a lot recently.
It's been a rough couple days, yeah.
So, then things happen. Okay, So we get a time skip, and when we come back, it's a brief time skip. It's not like, years or months pass or anything, but a little bit of time passes. And when we cut back in, Hawks is talking with Dabi, and he's kind of threatening him with one of his feather blade things. And he says, "This wasn't according to the plan, so why aren't you cooperating with me?" And we find out, Hawks is working with the League of Villains. Yeah.
Or is he?
Well.
They don't leave that one hanging for too long.
Nope. So he goes over, like, you changed the plan. We weren't supposed to do this today. It was supposed to be tomorrow. It was supposed to be in a factory by the water, not, in the middle of the town. And this Nomu that you sent out was way stronger than you said it was going to. You should have told me that. And Dabi just says, "I guess I changed my mind. And hey, I told you to bring someone who was kind of strong, but you brought the number one hero. So what the hell is with that?" So they trade a few bars because they're still just like, "I don't know if I trust you. I don't know if I trust you." And Dabi, is the one who specifically brings up, is like, "Yeah, I'm supposed to believe what the number two hero is telling me. Come on, I was testing how much I actually trust you. And look, there were no casualties today. You were still doing your job. So you really think that I'm going to believe everything that you say?" And Hawks just says, "I'm the number two hero, which means I have to keep up appearances. I can't lose the public's trust. And you know what? The more faith people have in me, the more juicy intel I can get for you. So take the long view here." And they part ways. And Dabi says, "It's like, you're still not going to get a chance to talk to the boss yet, but you'll hear from us soon." And then as Hawks is walking off, we get in a flashback from his perspective. And basically, some people said, like, "You need to join the League of Villains." And he's like, "What are you talking about? Didn't you send Gran Torino out to search for them and stuff?" And they're like, "How do you even know about that?" Anyway, but they tell him that, "Look, we need to have someone on the inside here. We have lacking intel when it comes to League of Villains. We need that in order to actually eradicate them. And we can actually do that with you." Hawk says, like, "Well, what about the people that are going to get hurt while I'm infiltrating them? Am I supposed to just turn a blind eye to that?" And the guy says, "You can, and you will. There will be no honor. There will be no accolades in it for you. Set your sights on the long game and act accordingly. There's no better man for the job as we see it." And Hawks comes in the present to visit Endeavor, and as he's recovering in the hospital, and just kind of like silently apologizes to him for his role in fucking him up like this. Before we close out the chapter, we see Dabi, who recalls because Endeavor had mentioned to him that he was the one who killed Snatch, the sand Hulk Hogan looking guy who fought them when they went off and killed Overhaul. And Dabi was like, "Oh, that's who Snatch was, right?" And one of his skin graft patch things suddenly starts to ooze all grossly. And he remembers Snatch's line to him, which is, "Do you ever stop and think about the families who got to live with that loss?" And Dabi says to himself, "I overthought things and kind of snapped there." So, that was a bit of an info dump, wasn't it?
There's a
They
lot.
did not keep the tension on that one very long, did they?
No.
League of Villains. No, he's a double agent.
It's a very, very strange chapter in that it pushes a lot into it, and a lot of it's kind of just like there and done. Like, oh hey, fucking Mirako showed up. Like, she showed up, she's gone. Like, okay, I guess they just needed someone to show up and help out there. And it's like Dabi showed up, and he's the evil, threatening villain. They're like, oh, that's what she's done. Hawks is a bad guy. 2 pages later, he's not really a bad guy. He's just doing double agent stuff right now. It's a lot kind of going on that maybe could have played a little bit better if it had a little bit longer to breathe. It's a really fast-paced chapter. It doesn't have a lot of time to dwell on these sorts of different factors it's bringing up.
Yeah. I mentioned last week the theory that Dabi could be one of Endeavor's failed children. And there seem to be some hints that seem to be pushing in that direction in this. The Dabi reflecting on Snatch's line about family, the fact that he specifically calls Endeavor Enji Todoroki, stuff like that. But I guess we'll see in the future.
Yeah. All right. Are we jumping over to Eden Zero then?
Yes, we're going to change up the order a little bit because of the special that we've got this week.
So this is Chapter 5, A Man Named Weiss. And we start this chapter with Zhao Mei, who says, "Someday you'll know more about who I am." By the way, don't read into time travel in this series because time doesn't matter much. And then she doesn't show up again. So she basically shows up at the start to be like, just roll with it. And I'm just going to roll with it. Let's see what happens here. I do
kind of like how this chapter basically vindicates both of us from last week, because you were basically right about everything. But then I was just like, oh, wow. And then the narrator shows up and is like, yeah, don't think much about it. All right.
Oh my God.
I'm way ahead of you.
And I'm known so well for my love of series that involve time travel with very little explanation. So we're going to see how this one goes. So last week, Rebecca and Shiki showed up on, I forget the name of the planet, doesn't matter. But they showed up to go find Professor Weiss. They showed up in his garage, and young-looking dude showed up to be like, hey, what are you doing here? And didn't seem to respond well to being called Professor Weiss. He was like, what do you mean? So we open up this week, he's pulled a gun on them, and he's like, you guys work for Sabir. And they're like, we don't know what you mean. This is Professor Weiss's house, isn't it? And Shiki puts on his X-ray goggles from last time, actually turning that weird fan service joke into something relatively important, because he looks upstairs. He's like, hey, there's somebody upstairs. And we start seeing bullets fly out from upstairs. So someone's starting to shoot through the roof. Shiki looks through the roof using the glasses, sees where the guy is, and basically punches a hole into the ceiling to reveal a gunman up there. Weiss then immediately hops onto a motorcycle and fucking books it. I kind of like, he's just like, later. They arrest the guy that kind of, was shooting him. And just says, you guys working for Weiss? Well, then give him a message. When one betrays us, Sabir the Mighty always makes him pay. And Shiki can't stop laughing because he's looking at him through the goggles, and he's like, I can't take a character who's naked easily. We cut away later, and Shiki, I guess, is still wearing the X-ray goggles, because he's like, whoa, there are rivers. Oh, no, never mind. He's just marveling at the fact that there are rivers underground either. I thought he was actually looking through the ground. He's like, there's rivers underground? That's my bad. They basically are having a conversation about this, and they're like, it's really weird that went down the way it is. And Shiki's like, boy, wasn't that guy the professor? I mean, they had the same name. And she pulls up a picture. She's like, no, this is the way it's supposed to look. He's like, doesn't kind of look like him? Like, no. And then Happy puts up a theory of maybe he invented an age reversal drug that it made him look younger, but it took away his memories too. Chiki's like, you've got it!
You've cracked the code!
Meanwhile, Rebecca's more confused because she's like, something's going wrong. I can't connect to the internet or anything like that. And then they get a news story talking about like, oh, hey, they just established a Shooting Star Guild, and it's going to be great news. This new guild has a bunch of promising new members. Chiki's like, hey, that's our guild. I didn't know it was brand new. Rebecca's like, yeah, it was brand new 50 years ago. And starts to kind of put the pieces together as we get a flashback to when Rebecca and Happy were living with Professor Weiss. And there's kind of an interest. I don't know if I'm reading into this line or not, where he's like, oh, hey, Professor. And he's like, have you grown any yet? And they're like, not a bit. So I'm like, is that supposed to be that maybe this planet had some weird kind of frozen in time mentality? Or I don't know. But he says like, hey, you guys got to go. And they're like, oh, why don't you go with us? Let's all live in Blue Garden. He's like, nah, it's too busy for me. But, this plant's dying. So you guys are going to have to kind of get going. And we cut back to the current times for a weirdly angled shot of Rebecca getting up that feels like Hiro was like, I want to draw a panty shot. So I was like, you could do part of one. Just
there, you can just see it.
I'm like, why is it? Hero's weird. And
let me just angle it down the 5 degrees necessary to get the one small glimpse of fabric covering her crotch.
So they go. Rick goes outside. And she's like, I knew it. Everything's outdated. These are old car models. The time's wrong. We're in the Norma of 50 years in the past, and they don't know how it happened. And Happy confirms it by like being a digital clock that confirms the time, and then they look to an actual clock for that time, and they're like, "Wow, 50 years later." Okay. And then a giant robot shows up. Well, actually, they note that though they're like, "Hey, yeah," as I said last week, it's the young Professor Wise. He's probably not a professor at this point, and that's why he was kind of weird to that.
Rebecca goes through about 5 different reactions to everything going on in a few seconds, because first she's like, "How did we do? Oh God, I don't think I've been born yet." Anyway, just calm down. And then, how did this happen? Anyway, we should find a live stream so we can get a lot of views. We don't have the internet. Damn it!
Oh, we can't meddle in the past. She's panicking quite a bit.
And then Happy's like, well, that means no live stream either.
Then a giant robot shows up. And it says, those are the kids working with Weiss, and they kind of immediately like, Sabir. And Weiss says, yeah, Weiss took my money. If you're with him, then you're just as guilty as he is. And he's like Rob Lucci in that he has some weird bird that hangs around with him. I don't know if it's supposed to feel like it's drawn shittier than he is. Like there's this weird shitty bird that feels like a doodle bob kind of situation where someone took a real bird and then drew a shitty version of it and that came to life and it's like, but yeah, there's like, oh wow, the professor's a thief. We cut over to Wise, who's hiding in some underground bunker saying, this is mine. I'm not giving it to anyone and I'll never let that lowlife Sabir have it. So that is essentially the chapter.
Yay! Yeah, all right.
I don't want to say too much on this because I feel like I would be mean to start like trying to really critically analyze a series that's only been going on for 5 chapters that has just now been like, hey guys, time travel is going to be like a really big deal in this, but you can't let your mind get like attached to it. Just whatever happens. I did the same thing with Lost. It sort of worked out. So I'll keep an open mind to it. I'll also note before we get to it, because I'm probably going to forget by then, there is no 7 Deadly Sins for this week. The only quote unquote chapter was a collection of like joke chapters.
Yeah, two little mini chapters. Yeah, one was a joke about Jericho's brother, who is dead, wanting her to train more instead of hanging around doing nothing, but still being proud of the progress she's made. Mm-hmm. And the other was Escanor and Hawks getting into an eating contest, which Escanor wanted to win because there was a prize from Merlin on the line. And he thought it was something representing her love, but it was actually something to make him shit.
It's a great time.
That was the chapters. So, that said, let's go on over to Food Wars, Shokugeki no Soma. Chapter 272, A Subversive Visitor. So, last time we were introduced to the fact that Joichiro has a second son, who was the one going around calling themselves Saiba, full name apparently Asahi Saiba, and they beat Joichiro in a Shokugeki handily. And there you go. We open this one with Alice. Yay!
I'm so happy Alice is back. I'm sure they're going to do something to make her cool and endearing and really fun at the start of it. Oh, wait, she's a lazy twat? Never mind.
Yeah, she's being a real bitch, honestly. She's like, why do I have to do this? I've been walking around all day. I'm tired. And there's no sign of the guy you sent me to look after. I can't find him. It's like, Rio, bring me my sunscreen. And then she's like, oh, I'm all grody and sweaty. I'm going to go back to that hot springs for another bath. There you go. Thank you, Alice. Bye. It's been a week since the phone call with Chef Silo. They have not heard anything from him, and they've made no progress in their investigation, basically. And then all of a sudden, Erina gets a call from Hisako saying that the new instructor that she had called for has arrived. And that's where we get introduced to this very young, curly-headed looking instructor who introduces himself as, my name is Suzuki. Nice to meet you all.
I heard so many people who were just like, oh my God, like, I'm going to go drown a toddler in my panties after this because he's so hot. And I'm just like, what? That's a line.
There were so many people who were just like, I'm ready for this guy instead of Soma. Yeah.
I was just like, he looks lame. I don't get it.
I think it's the vest that ruins it. It's just
no, it's the curly hair for me. It's the curly hair, like the mop top.
Buy a comb. Get a haircut. Your bangs shouldn't be that long.
Fuck you, hippie. No, I don't know. Just doesn't work for me.
Arina basically explains as this guy's introduced, like, yeah, I've been looking for new instructors because the Izami administration, a lot of faculty members were dismissed. Why didn't you hire them back? She actually says specifically that they were able to convince several of them to return, but she has asked for, alumni to fill in their remaining positions. And they're still actually scouting for replacements. So the new class is introduced to young instructor Suzuki, and they're like, oh my gosh, if he was invited here by the Institute, what kind of terrifying classes will he have? And we cut away over to Soma and Megami, and they're like, what are we gonna do? I don't know. Megami brings up their conversation with King Dude. The series has just started referring to him specifically as Mr. Monarch, so I don't really feel any guilt of just calling him King Dude. So, King Dude says that, once a Cuisinier Noir has actually finished their job, usually they'll go into hiding or they'll flee to some other country. In fact, that was why I first came to Japan. And the more experienced they are, the more context they'll have in various different countries. Plus, they're masters of disguise. Oh, yes. The bandana around the mouth. No one will know who I am now. Like, I will not look the least bit suspicious.
If I put on this fake moustache on top of my real moustache, no one will know.
See, this one is black and waxed. This one is black and waxed and curled downward.
Makes eating very difficult.
Just curls into the mouth.
Yeah, it's like, I constantly chew it.
Oh, gosh. So, basically, from what he told them in that conversation, the whole point of it was like, so Saiba could actually be hiding out in Japan for all you know. And someone's like, wouldn't it be hilarious if he just popped up here at the school, disguising himself as a new teacher or something? Megami seems to believe that Soma is bothered by something that's happened recently. Soma's trying to put on airs like it doesn't really bother. It's like, yeah, I guess Dad decided to sow his wild oats and got himself a secret love child out of it. He always did have a bad habit of getting distracted, forgetting to mention the important stuff, in my experience. So, we cut over to Suzuki's class, and he's just like, hey, have you guys ever heard of these Chitara snacks? He just got like these cheese sticks to hand out. It's like, here, let's try some of this stuff. And he just has conversations with a bunch of them. He tells one of them he really needs to confess to the girl he likes. Like, come on, you gotta have some guts and go on out and do it. Here, have another Chitara stick.
It's weird because like it almost kind of looks like because everyone's drinking soda. I guess the implication is like they're all drunk off of it. They're all like having a really good party because all like everyone else seems like has like the red blushy face kind of mark. So I like to think he's just giving them soda and told them all it's beer.
Here. Call her on your phone right now.
Oh man, what should I say to her? Just say that you love her. I fucking love you, you bitch. I did it.
Listen. Ari, I just had like 20 Chitara sticks.
She's like, what? Is that code for something? Are you doing drugs? I think they are.
Were there Thundercats themed drugs now?
How do I get some?
And the girls are like fawning over him. Oh, do you have a girlfriend? Someone Megumi can't help but hear the ruckus coming from the class, so they kind of poke their heads in. They're like, oh, wow, he's got snacks and stuff, including Packy. Because you can't say Pocky.
Obviously.
Trademarked. Suzuki immediately spots them, and he's like, hey, you guys are late for class, but I don't really mind. I'll be generous. This is my first class. I'm not that scary, though. Come on, I'm just your average guy. And he's like dragging Megumi into the class by her arm. But some of the other students say like, oh, those guys aren't in this class. They're members of the Council of 10. Tadakoro is the 10th seat, and Yukihira is the first seat. And immediately Suzuki's like, really? While he's still holding on to Megumi's arm, I should point out.
He does everything but like start doing the Mr. Burns, like, excellent.
He offers them Chitara sticks, and I guess then after the class is over, he just kind of has a conversation with them separately. And he just says, like, yeah, I just brought all these snacks so that I could get close to my students. Yeah. The convenience stores in Japan have some great snacks. Here, have some kombu. Yeah, have some of this, have some of that. I'm Suzuki, by the way. Nice to meet you. And he and Soma shake hands, and then he like pulls them in close, and he's like, hey, you're a handsome one. Do you have a girlfriend? And someone's like, no. Why not? It's very sexual, honestly. He's like just leans in really close to him and is teasing him the whole time, and Soma's blushing. I swear, there's like going to be fan art of this very, very quickly. But the whole point of this is that he's actually completely thrown Soma off of his rhythm, which doesn't happen in personal interactions too much because Soma tends to be the eccentric one. But Suzuki kind of just out of the blue says that, for someone who's taking the first seat, that's just not going to do. Here, I'll give you advice, a trick to become a better chef. You see, you want to find that someone special, one who means so much. You want to give her the best food you've ever made. Anyway, that's what my teacher told me, at least. Gonna get drinks. That leaves Megumi and Soma alone for a little bit, and Soma mentions like, I get the feeling this isn't the first time we've met. And Suzuki talks to himself as he's going out on his own. So, I've already met 2 of the top students the Institute has to offer. Soma Yukihira, first seat in the Council of 10. And he comes back in grabs a kitchen knife and just says, in exchange for the tip I just gave you, have a Shokugeki with you right now, Mr. Hira. So
this happened a bit faster than I thought.
Well, here's the thing. The chapter seems to so heavily be implying this is Asahi, this is Soma's older brother, or that I'm kind of inclined to believe it's not, because it just seems it's his older brother. It's too on the nose. And also, it feels like it would be a really lame way of introducing him to just be like, your brother. And he just shows up the next chapter.
I would agree with you if
But
I didn't think that this series had the talent to be, or not the talent, but the creativity to be like, oh, we'll just do a red herring for a couple chapters, and it turns out he's not actually, like, I feel like it's just a much more straightforward kind of series than that, and I feel like this just is his brother.
it almost feels like this is someone that Joichiro sent to help Soma.
Potentially.
Like, so, and that's why it's not the first time that they've met. Maybe it was someone who used to hang around the Yukihira shop. I don't know. I guess I could see like a guy like this being the antagonist, though. You know, someone who's a lot like Soma, but just a more twisted version of him. But I don't know. I guess we'll see. I really just get this kind of gut feeling. It's like it just seems too obvious. Like they keep on dropping those hints. It's like it's definitely his brother. Come on, What if my brother were just to show up as a chef?
That's my thing, though. Is like that's right along this series' sense of humor. Of like they just make a joke about it, and it's exactly what happens.
All right. I guess we'll talk a little bit about the special one shot that the creators of Shokugeki no Soma made, which is Shokugeki no Sanji. Just a quick little story about Sanji from One Piece. Yeah.
It's so awesome in terms of seeing what's the artist's name? I always forget. Shunseki. Shunseki's art of Sanji is just so fucking cool in scenes that it's like, fuck.
He looks very suave and calm and collected. It's cool Sanji, like from early One Piece.
Yeah.
Just go through it very quickly. Basically, it's at the Barati, right? That's what it was called, I think. It was back on its time on the Barati, although towards the end of it, because at the very end of the chapter, they like spot the Going Merry heading towards them. So Sanji is... Was it the Going Merry, or was it another ship at that time?
It was the Going... no, it was... Yeah, it was the Going Merry, because they got the Going Merry on Syrup Island, which is where Usopp was. They had Usopp at this point.
Okay. That was the thing I was trying to remember, that order there. Because I knew that Usopp joined at the same time as they got the Going Merry. But anyway. So the Barati is visited by this famous food critic, this large woman who has a lot of confidence, and I'll give her that, because she's got the cleavage and the legs bare and stuff. It's like, hey, you rock it, girl, And of course, by the end of the chapter, a hot version of her appears. So, of course, it's Shunseki drawing this. Of course, he did that. Basically, she refused to eat her meal because she can just tell by looking at it that it's not going to be good. She's super judgmental. So Sanji, after she provokes him because she constantly insults Zeph, saying like, oh, the owner's an older gentleman, yes? Is he senile to consider a cheap rundown excuse for a restaurant like this his treasure? And I do love the reaction that Sanji has to that, which is like immediately like he just burns away his whole cigarette. It's like, all right. And so he says that he's going to cook another dish for her, and he whips off his jacket. He's like, hang on one moment, just posing for freaking GQ. All of a sudden, and he says, like, I'm gonna start making something, and he says basically that if he can actually impress her, that she's going to have to clean her plate. She's got to eat all the food that they've laid out for her, because otherwise that's an insult to the chef. So he prepared it, and also to the food itself. And sure enough, after he cooks this non-existent type of lobster for her, the tomahawk lobster, she immediately freaks out because it's so delicious. We get a little bit of the food wars kind of thing where he, just explain the ingredient method and stuff. And finally, Sanji actually properly introduces himself, saying that he's the sous chef at the sea restaurant Barati, so remember that. And he talks about how important the Barati is, saying it provides a moment's rest to sailors in the middle of a long, tiring sea voyage, to provide good, hearty food for all comers who arrive with empty stomachs. That is why the Barati sails these seas. A flimsy, one-trick tongue like yours has no right to say a thing about this ship. Now, madam, if you would, clean your plate like you promised. He does it in this very, threatening manner, too. It's like, you eat your fucking food.
I'll fucking punch you.
No, he won't. He'll kick her.
Well, he won't do that, because it's a woman.
It's a lady. And she eats her food, and it's so delicious. It's like, she said, I do love the way that this is put, which is, it's as though I'm being reborn from the inside out. It's so good that it feels like I've gotten a taste of a delicious fruit, a forbidden fruit that changes a person completely, granting them new and amazing powers. A devil fruit, the strip fruit. And she turns into a naked hot woman in her mind.
Ironic, though, because devil fruits are notoriously bad tasting.
That's true. So Sanji dons his jacket and kind of, straightens himself up and says, Madam is ready to go home. Somebody see her to the door. And be polite about it, too. I do like how some of the chefs are like, yeah, Sanji, you sure whooped that old hag's butt. And he's like, hey, I would never harm a lady, no matter who they are. All I did was cook a tasty meal for her to eat. Good for you, Sanji. It was a cool little diversion.
I learned something from this chapter about One Piece, though.
Really?
I never realized that Zeph's mustache was actually like a real mustache and not his nose hairs that he entwined together and braided. I always thought it was because the panel was from One Piece, it always looked like they directly came from his nose, but there's several shots here of his nose protruding over the mustache, so I learned something.
So you just assumed that it was a wacky character design thing.
Yeah.
Like he didn't have enough already with his giant hat. Okay. It was fun to see this, though. I did like it, and I like the way that Sanji came off in it. Okay. That all done. We're going to do We Never Learn. No, wait. We moved stuff around. Shokugeki. No, we did that. Yeah, We Never Learn. That's where we are now. Okay.
So We Never Learn. Question 72. Its marks sometimes disturb the stability of X. This is another weird chapter. It starts as a Uruka chapter, and she comes in and she's like, "Oh hey, Yueka, what's going on?" He's like, "Oh, I'm a bit short on sleep." Then he turns around and she sees 2 marks on his neck, and she's like, "Oh, those must be some bug bites or something." And Yueka gets really nervous about it. He's like, "Oh, all right, yeah, they stand out." And she gives him some band-aids to put over it. And while he's putting them on, she's like, "Those are clearly hickeys!" So she starts panicking because she's like, it has to be someone else. And she tries to be like, I don't know, maybe it could have been some accident. You could probably leave her pretty easily. And she spends the day sucking on her arm to try to see and ends up giving herself some arm hickeys over it. But she's like, it's really hard. It can't be an accident. So she's like, oh, who was it? I saw him leaving yesterday and he was with, she goes over to, oh my God, why am I forgetting her name? Ogata. Goes to Ogata. Is like, yeah, well, what happened? Were you studying with Yuega? She's like, yeah, same as always. And she starts imagining what the scenario was, and it's just like, I like this one maybe the most because it's Ogata in the image, and she's just like, Naruyuki, your skin textures here feels like udon. I'm learning so much. And poor Ogata's just staring there clueless. And Uruka's just like, it's right. Texture is everything with udon. I get it. Ogata's like, I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. She says it in her words, which is very over the top, but she's just like, I don't get it. If there's no other suspects. And Ogata's like, actually. And then we cut over to Kirisu. And she does the same sort of thing, which is like, oh no, she must have been Kirisu. We get the same sort of thing of just can you say suck in English? She's like, no, it'd be more like sucked. I'm afraid I'm going to have to punish you again. And she starts screaming did you do it, Sensei? Did you punish him? And
Kirisu's a robot for this chapter.
Yeah. She's just like, I see. Clearly you've gone insane. Shut up and leave. She says, I don't know what you're talking about, but after I spoke to Hiega, he met with somebody else. And then we see like, oh, he went to Fumino. And we do the same thing there with Fumino, where she's going through like the whole thing there about just like, oh, what's the difference between here to here? Like pointing at like the different parts of his neck and the little subtle thing there. But she leads into it with like oh, I'm trying to be careful, but I left a mark, didn't I? And so Iruka says, "Ah, who knew you were so naughty behind that angelic face?" And they're like, I'm talking about his notebook. I spilled something on his notebook yesterday. So they cut away all these three. They can't possibly be it. So she's like, oh, Naruki, did you meet with anyone else yesterday? He's like, oh yeah, I met with my friend. So it's the one friend I always forget that he has. He has two. This is one of them. I don't remember his name. I'm trying to see, did he even say his name? Oh, Kobayan?
Koba, yeah.
Koba, yeah, whatever. Koba's like, yeah, he did come by. Here's a picture of the two of us hanging out together. And, we just hung out. And
just
like,
two dudes hanging out.
And she's like, oh, there are no hickeys on his neck there. That means it must have been. And then it becomes like a yaoi scene where she's like, oh, yes, of course I love Tsunami, but I have a separate appetite for our friendship. It's just such a great line for that visual image. And then she's like, that doesn't matter if they're boys. Fucking, I love Iruka. I love that stops her concern. She doesn't actually get the real answer to this scenario, which we find out at the end was like his younger siblings were having dreams about ice cream and basically sucking on him, which is kind of really weird. But
who sucks on ice cream?
Her end of this scenario, she's like, Yueka was just making out with this dude, bro, friend. Nothing weird about that.
I was trying to figure out this. Like, if she says that it doesn't count if it was between guys, is that homophobic? I can't.
I mean, this has been a rule they've sort of established at this point in this series. It doesn't matter if you're of the same gender, because it's the same thing.
Kisses, yeah, it doesn't count the same. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's maybe just very simplistic thinking. I don't know. I just love her. I love that that's the resolution. She doesn't find out the real answer. She's like, oh, it's just some yaoi shit. Awesome. Time for swim practice.
And then there's the last little instant of Yuiga's sister being a brocon. So
yeah. So it's just sort of, that's how it ends. They find out that the siblings were licking him, and he was like, and he also realized, he's like, huh, that was weird. Iruka had tickies. I guess I shouldn't think about it.
I will say that I don't want to leave out the one actually kind of cute little moment in this where Koba and Yuiga, there's the picture of them hanging out and Yuiga's just eating and he's just like, oh, they're so good.
He seems very happy.
Because he has to eat bread crusts, Chris.
God, I forgot about that shit.
And, Koba's just like, yeah, whenever Nari-chan eats something tasty, he looks really happy, doesn't he? And Ruka's like, oh, he looks so cute. Oh, God.
Good times.
All right. So, hi. All right. So, Dr. Stone, Z equals 67, full mobilization. So they managed to get Nikki, the spy, whatever. I'm not sure exactly what her position was on their side, but she says to them, like, as for that Lillian impersonation that you were doing before, I give you only 55 points. So they're like, okay, I guess that we have to listen to the input of a super fan, though. But she says, like, hey, but you know what? I'll help you work on it, so that way nobody's actually going to see through it from now on. And they're like, all right, but here's the thing, though. Ukyo, if you play that song over and over, let's just say it won't be music to his ears. I seriously doubt you'll fool him, even if it's over the phone. I think the song's the problem. Because the song is like the genuine article. But I think I get what she means. Like, if he hears it over and over again, he's not going to believe it. So Taiju actually is the one who comes up to the solution with this, which is if there's going to be trouble if we play the song over and over, then let's just not play the song over and over. And Yuzuri is like, I solved the problem, everybody. And Yuzuriha's just like, oh yeah, if we just get a whole bunch of people together and only play it for a group of them while Ukyo's distracted, then yeah. And Nick is like, good job, Taiju. Your simple mind figured out the solution.
Wait, I actually solved it? Oh my god, this never happened before. Usually I get punched at this point. That's right. That feels
like that. So, Seku, of course, this is the first time he's actually heard of Ukyo, so he looks to Gen for information, and Gen says, like, yeah, he used to be a sonar operator on a submarine. He has fantastic hearing. And as we all know, Chris, being a sonar operator on a submarine trains you to be a freaking archer, doesn't it? A skilled hunter.
Yeah.
But yeah, Gen brings up then, it's like, yeah, he's the one who actually has Chrome and Magma pinned down, so I hope that they're okay. We cut over and we see. So it's Chrome, and he looks like he's filled with arrows. He's just holding a bird in his hands. And Magma, meanwhile, is climbing up, and he says, Chrome, your death won't go to waste. And then it actually closes in and reveals that the arrows have all just barely missed Chrome on purpose. They're just like, we're kind of pinned all around him. And Chrome's like, I'm not dead yet! I haven't even been shot once!
Although I'm very nervous about the one that made it into like the shot of his pants, like the crotch of his pants.
Yeah.
That's a very terrifying shot.
I'm sure that's the only focus on his crotch that we'll get in the entire rest of this chapter. Don't worry about it, Chris. Mm-hmm. So, Magma says, like, thanks to you, those arrows have revealed exactly where Ukyo is hiding. So, and he charges out into the open. And, Chrome looks at the position of the arrows, and he's like, he's been shooting from different positions, clearly. And Magma's would be like, where'd he go?
Oh, I miss Magma. I mean, he's still right there, but...
So, Chrome thinks about this. He's like, yeah, he's actually deliberately been missing me, because you've been shooting me so precisely from all these different angles. He can't have just missed me all those times. So Ukyo's not actually trying to kill us. He must want us captured unharmed to make us spill what we know. And in that case, he decides to make a white flag out of his underwear. He just gives himself a wedgie and tears it out.
It'd be great if he was just like, what's a white flag with a brown streak down the middle mean?
So Ukyo immediately descends upon him, ties him up and takes him away, and Magma's left, looking around. I was like, where is he? And he spots Chrome in the distance, kind of just casually whistling while he's being carried off and all tied up. I just love how casual he's
crap.
Damn it. So that leaves Chrome and Ukyo to talk among themselves. He unties Chrome because he's like, I know that you've actually surrendered, but at this point you're not actually going to try and escape. I guess that you actually did that so that you could actually allow your friends to get away, didn't you? And so you made a pretty good decision there, given your situation. And Chrome, starts to get all embarrassed and all shucksy about it, and then he's like, oh, wait a minute, he's trying to get some more information out of me. I've got to not let myself be tricked into talking so easily. After seemingly a very short walk, they come to Tsukasa, and Chrome says, like, I don't need you to introduce yourself. I can already tell based on your presence. I've been looking forward to this. Nice to meet you, Tsukasa. The name's Chrome, a scientist from Ishigami Village. And sure enough, there's Tsukasa with a big old cloak on, surrounded by Hyoga and two other intimidating-looking dudes, one of which has like a mohawk. Did I literally just get like a political advertisement as a text? Fuck off. Vote for me! He's like, fuck you.
It'd be great if it was like a really weird one. Like, Rudy Giuliani needs your help. You're like, what are you even running for? You're something in Florida?
Well, you do need my help, I guess, because, considering all this crap that's going on you. Anyway, so Magma gets back to Ishigami Village, and they, of course, learn that Chrome has been captured, and Kohaku immediately snatches up her katana and starts to rush off. And they're like, "Oh, what are you doing? We stop! No, someone stop her!" But everyone's like, "Well, we can't stop her. Nobody's going to be able to catch up with her. She's too fast." So Senku just kind of moves some stuff around on the cell phone and converts it into a megaphone. And he's like, "Hey, get back here, lioness!" And Kaku immediately stops, like, "I'm not a lioness!"
I love her angry face there. It's just such a great, like, "I'm not a lioness!" Like screaming it to him. And everyone's like, "Oh, she stopped." Like, and it's like it's that simple to stop her.
So that allows people to catch up with Kohaku and stop her from rushing off on her own. And Senku says, like, "Yeah, going alone's not going to cut it. We'll all have to make the trip." And they're like, "Do you mean?" "Yeah, the Kingdom of Science is fully mobilizing. Now that Homura's scouting days are over, there's no reason to wait any longer. The whole village will migrate and set up camp near the Empire. Then our scheme to rescue Chrome won't be just a pipe dream." Interesting that they set up the whole cell phone and everything like that, and then they're immediately moving way closer to Tsukasa's empire. But I guess that's the turn things have taken. The issue is that they have so much scientific equipment that they're taking all of it with them that they can't possibly travel quickly this way. As Suika and Kaseki and Gen are struggling to move stuff around, and again, Kinro says, like, what are we going to do with all of this stuff? And because Senku has said, like, we'll lose if we don't have all of our resources and equipment to use. And Senku says, "Well, we're making a motor vehicle." And there's like this imagined like giant war jeep or something that they're riding around in. I love the expressions actually inside of the jeep amongst the riders. There's Senku at the wheel, Gen looking all terrified, and Kohaku in the back being like, "Wow, this is fun!"
Way!
And Gen is just like, "What, really?" I am pretty damn certain that their vehicle, whatever they make, is not going to look anything like it's imagined there.
What do you mean, Nick? Everything they make looks exactly like we think it is.
Exactly. So, yeah, there's some cool little bits here and there.
It's fun. It's an interesting thing, too, here, because it seems as though Chrome getting caught at least wasn't part of the plan. So there now does at least seem to be like, okay, this not 100% like victory after victory for their team. Like this is a loss that shakes up their plans. It doesn't seem to be fucked up too much, but it is a wrinkle in their plan.
Yeah, and they are going to make a vehicle next time, or start on it at least. Probably finish it, let's be real. Invention chapters seem to go really quickly, unless they run into, we need to grab this thingy.
Yeah. All
right, we are basically skipping 7 Deadly Sins this week, so let's move on to the Promised Neverland. Let's just wrap up that arc, I guess. So, chapter 96, Welcome Home. Yep. Goldie Pond's been destroyed. There's blood everywhere from dead demons, including, like, it looks like just a pile of blood next to Luvis's hat.
You could maybe use this to fuel, I guess, a theory that Luvis survived and left, and that's why there's no body there. But since they sunk the entire city beneath water, like,
yeah,
I guess maybe he is still alive, and that's like the way they like say, like, oh, he was alive. You didn't look at the clues, but I
shut up. He's fine.
I'd assume he's dead since they blew up the entire city. I guess he's a super demon. He can do whatever he wants, but
yeah. So we immediately hone in on the old man carrying Emma on his back, and he's just like, "Oh, come on, hang in there. We gotta get you back to your family, right? And you want to know my name, so you can't die on me, Emma." We cut over.
Be great. He's like, "Come on, Steve, you can do it." She's like, "Gotcha, Steve." He's like, you tricked me.
Fuck you. We cut over to the hideout where Dawn and Guild and the other kids are, and they're all still waiting, and they're like, "Oh, it's been almost a week since Ray and Emma left. I wonder if they're there yet. I wonder if they're okay." There is a nice little moment briefly where Dawn, says, "Hey, Gilda, it's showing on your face again. I know you're worried, but if we act nervous, then they're going to get uneasy too. So we've got to put on a strong front." And she's like, "Yeah, you're right." I do like that little detail there. It's like showing that they have to take this role of responsibility and leadership amongst them. So, Dawn, to distract some of the others, is like, hey, let's go, hunt our dinner. But as they're heading towards the exit, the hatch opens up, and of course, the old man comes down with Emma on his back, and all the kids are like, "Oh, what happened?" And he tells them all, "Hey, move!" And he gets her to a table so that they can do a blood transfusion on her, and just running through the stuff that he needs to do in his head. And then Gilda shows up, and she's got the detonation switch, and he's like, "Oh, I forgot about that."
I do really enjoy that.
It's actually kind of funny. Like, because this is supposed to be this like big moment of tension. It's like, oh god, I completely forgot about the switch. But then he just goes, "Oh no!" No, wait. And he's like, no, that's wrong. There's no time to explain. I can't. Because she immediately is like, "Tell me where Ray is, or tell me what happened, or I'm going to blow this whole place up. But what did you do? You killed my siblings." But one of the girls, I don't remember all these fucking kids' names, I was like, Emma's still alive. She's got a weak pulse. And the old man's like, "Yeah, come on. Who here is Don and Dominic? You guys have the blood type that can transfer to Emma. Ray told me, so come on, let's move this." And so
he's like, "I remember everyone's blood types. It's a thing I do."
Baby memories.
I'm super positive. They're like, it's not a blood type, right?
It is when you're #red.
Out of curiosity, because I just found this out when I went to doctor, because I was like, oh my god, I really just don't know my blood type. And I was like, hey, can you tell me? And he's like, I don't have it. He's like, you really kind of get it if you pay for a blood test result to do it, or just go and get your blood taken. They do it every time. Like, even if your card says you're one blood type as opposed to another, they'll always do a blood test first. It's like, huh. So I don't need to know my blood type then.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let the professionals handle it.
Yeah, the only reason I guess you would need to know it then would be in case of an emergency like this, where you're like, oh, this person's going to bleed out if they don't get an immediate transfusion, So, so from this, Gilda immediately concludes, like, okay, yeah, but this guy is at least trying to save him right now, so let's do this. And we cut away over to Ray leading the kids around, and of course, night has fallen by this point. So by this point, they must be tired of his shit, because they're like, "Oh, that girl made it. I hope she made it. She saved me. Yeah, she saved me too, and me too." I saved myself.
Yeah.
Come on, what's wrong with you guys?
Hey guys, Ray's still here. Let's not talk about how much we love Ray. Oh no, Ray is. Remember? I kicked over that table. I wasn't there for that. Well, if someone get a table now, I'll kick it over right now. Looks super cool.
Oh fuck! Hang on. Nobody saw that. Hey.
You guys got to carry me back to the nurse.
Save me! Save #Ray! I deserve it.
Throw your lives to the floor and die in order to save Ray.
Hold that nameless old man back here so that he can carry me. Time skip. Emma wakes up in the base in a hospital bed. She's got a breathing mask on and an IV. And she wakes up and she's surrounded by everyone. Lucas is, well, actually, the old man's not there in this initial two.
There's actually a couple kids that aren't there, but it's notably, I think, all the kids from, like, notable kids from the fucking farm they were at, and then the actual kids from Greece.
The farm who were grievously injured, plus all the kids that were left behind.
What the fuck is wrong with Jillian's face, though?
I was going to say the same thing. Jillian's face is so fucked up. She looks like a frog.
She looks like a monster. Like, this is like...
Want to eat Emma. Like, look at her.
Like, okay, so, like, I'm going to set it up for you. This is a Blumhouse picture, because I don't have a lot of money. It's a Blumhouse picture. Emma wakes up from this disaster. She just survived the monster. And we pan across all these faces. And then it gets to Jillian, and it's the face of the monster, and we keep panning across. And that's when we realize, like, oh no, the monster's not dead. Awesome.
It's actually Lewis' face on Jillian's body. We haven't finished playing yet, Emma.
But she keeps panning across. She's like, where's Fat Chops? Oh, there he is.
Wait a second. Hang on. Oh, there you are.
What's up, Fatso? She's like, what's up, Tubbs? How's it going? How's it going, Titty McFat bitch?
You've got a weird look on your face right now, Fat Chops. And like Jillian with Loops' face lifts his head up and it's on a spike. Like, oh, okay.
She's like, oh, you've lost some weight. Good for you. You're slimming down.
Fat Chops' headless corpse raised the middle finger. So Emma is just kind of confused because she's just woken up and everyone's like, you're awake! Oh, we're so happy! And Gilda just says, welcome home, Emma. And everyone's happy that she's awake now. And then she spies the old man, behind everyone because he's taller than them. And he's like, oh, hey. And he's like, no, you fucking stay in bed. Broke my back saving your ass. You fucking get better. But she thanks him for saving her life. And he says, yeah, and I'm sorry, stuff. And then Emma's like, I'm Emma. Tell me your name.
That'd be great. She just grabs him by the vest and pulls him in. What's your name?
Commits suicide in the bed. It's like, I swear I'll do it.
I ripped this IV out like nobody's business.
And he finally introduces himself. He says, my name is Yugo.
Yu-Gi-Oh? No. Yugo.
Oh, can I play a card game? No.
I should have let you die in that fucking pond.
I remember when I hate you.
I'm lying. It's not Yugo. It's something else. She's like, oh, I had to earn your trust again.
They make notes I was like, oh, that's some weird sounding name. And when we think about it, it's like, yeah, it's like, has anyone else in this series that's a human had anything resembling a Japanese sounding name?
Try to think of all the characters I know, and it's like Emma, Ray, Norman,
Crone,
Gilda, Dawn, Chris, and then even the kids from the thing are like what? Jillian, Violet, yeah, fucking Hat Dude, which is I guess a weird name, but yeah, he has a real name. I don't remember.
So yeah. That is an odd detail there. I wonder if it's at all supposed to be relevant because he's from the same plant as Lucas. Yeah. So it's not a matter of like which farm he came from.
Maybe the mom that had him was just feeling fucking stupid. That like she was like, I want my kid to be special.
When I was pregnant.
She's like, I'm going to call my kid Apple. They're like, that's stupid. She's like, how about Yugo? They're like, it's less stupid. Go ahead.
At least it's not Kaylee. At least it's not Kaylee with like 8 Y's in it. Kaylee, is that spelled with like one? Is that spelled like with I's, with 1 Y, with 2 Y's? It's like no, 7 Y's. Yeah. Kaylee.
It's actually Kaylee, but you don't pronounce the first, you don't pronounce the first 3.
There's Y every other letter.
It's like an old fucking AOL screen name, but you replace the X's with Y's. Woo woo woo, Kaylee, woo woo woo.
We get some explanation that Emma has been in a coma for 4 weeks. And there's a great little reaction panel where, there's the narration. And then the first bit of dialogue is Emma with her face is like, ah! And then there's just a number 4 floating by her head. Like 4. And Ray is trying to feed her, which is kind of cute. Have some fucking soap. Drink it. Drink it in your face. Drink the soap. They established that some of the kids still haven't woken up from being attacked. They were actually able to get away from the pursuers, although they did encounter some demons, which I fought off single-handedly. And Emma is now reinvigorated. She's basically recovers a little bit more, and then she's up on crutches again. Just like, I've lost 4 weeks, but I can't stay still. I've got to do something. And so she has Gilda gather everyone together, gets the pen out and says, Mr. Minerva said, choose the feature you want, and he left us this information. We're going to get Phil and the rest of them. I want you to hear my plan. And the next phase of the series looks like it's coming up. I will say that I am happy that we didn't get bogged down on the journey back. It would have just been repeating beats from the past time, just drawing it out, I think, unnecessarily. But I do think that maybe the actual reunion could have been a little bit longer. Maybe like dedicate a bit more time to the tension of, is Gilda gonna hit that switch when Yugo shows up? But overall, I'm mostly just happy that we didn't get stuck on the return journey for like 2 or 3 weeks. So
yeah, I had a feeling. I'll be curious to see what happens in the next week when they're like, hey, we're going to hear our plan. To be like, do they include any of the characters from the last arc in it? I assume like Yugo and Lucas maybe would get involved. And maybe throw in some of the side characters, but I'll be curious to see if they do include any of them or not.
Yeah, because specifically, she asked Gilda to just gather their siblings.
We don't see Adam at all.
No, but considering that he's a bit of a weird one, so maybe he wouldn't have, and also maybe he wouldn't have fit into that room. Honestly,
true. I'm just noting like we haven't seen him yet, so I'm curious if he's still around.
Entirely possibly wander around by himself.
All right, is this Black Clover time?
Yeah.
All right. We're going to have to do this quick because we're running out of time. Black Clover page 166, the Resurrected Avenger. So we start this with a whole thing going on between William Vangeance and his whole deal. So he's talking about how even when he was a kid, he felt someone sleeping inside of me, a person who seemed to be really hurt and angry. And I thought they were weak, so I had to protect them. My body didn't just belong to me. So, they were there with me through my entire lonely childhood. And at the age of 9, I began to have a certain dream frequently of blissful days and ending of treachery. And then I felt as if I had a mission to protect you with this visual of this burning, massacre, essentially. And he talks about how at 13 he met Master Julius, and he was the first person to ever acknowledge him, and he was very kind, and, he was such a great person that he decided when he received his grimoire it would be in service of this person. And then when I was 16, you woke up. And that was at the time that, I was part of the Gray Deer and, you had this thing. And I realized that there were, we started to switch places and you had a plan. You had a mission you absolutely had to carry on to completion. And that mission would betray my other special person and the nation. And I didn't know who to choose. I stayed allied with both of you, which kind of, I guess, explains why William Vangeance had such an off again, like on again, like sort of mischievousness to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I couldn't decide who to choose, so I left the decision to the two of you. What an embarrassment I am. And you won, so I'm sorry, Master Julius. And congratulations, Patry. And since your dream has come true, this is where we part ways. Goodbye. If possible, and it fades away, and we see, I guess, as we just know, Patry.
It's gonna be weird getting used to referring to him as that, because he still looks the exact same as Leashed. Yeah. So
but Patry's like, I must have used too much power and fell asleep. But my reincarnation has been completed, and William has fallen into a deep sleep. So goodbye to my one human friend. And now that you are gone, there are no humans I can't kill. So it looks like he's on his way heading over to Clover Castle, and he's going to get his final vengeance. Then we go back into the cave, and we see Raditz wake up. His grimoire starts glowing again, and he kind of rises from the, I don't know what it is, I guess.
From his clothes.
Sticky ash? I don't know. He starts bursting out of it. And they realize that in that moment, Raditz realizes his life was in danger, and his grimoire, which had always kind of revolved around the ability of necromancy, evolved, was perfected, and it allowed him to reincarnate into his body. And he's very angry about what happened to him. He's screaming and shouting. He's like, "You tricked me! You killed me!" And the other two, Sally and third guy whose name I never remember, they're up too, basically as you guys were in close proximity to me, so I guess you got resurrected too.
Now get naked, both of you.
And I will admit, I am kind of glad these characters came back, because they were the only ones in that group to kind of have any sort of character development, so it's nice that they might have a more proper conclusion to themselves. But, yeah, we'll see what happens with all that. Then we cut over to Asta in the back in the town. He's like, "Hey, we saved everybody. We're the best. Yay, Black Bulls are the toughest team ever. Woohoo!" They're all high-fiving each other when Ratty shows up and he's like, "Hey, Black Bulls, I'm going to use you in my revenge."
Yeah, the last part of this chapter is whatever.
I'm kind of interested. It's somewhat of a twist into things, but I just don't know what these three characters are going. Like, it'd be different if we were at the point where you're like, how is anyone going to stop Leash? Like, wow, this new unstable element has come in. But I'm like, What are these guys going to do? Sit around and high five Asta some more after he beats everyone single-handedly? He doesn't need more people to do that.
I also get the impression that we're definitely meant to take from this, like, oh, well, William Vengeance could end up playing a role later in the series. You know, Patry was dormant inside of him for so long, so the fact that he has fallen into an eternal slumber is not a permanent thing. So there's that too. And I will say that was probably the most interesting part of Black Clover that we've gotten recently in terms of, like, you know, just examining more the relationship that they had, and why Vengeance did the stuff that he did. Yeah. It was weird to suddenly get this dropped on us when it did, but then seeing how it goes into Patry waking up after the action they took, it's like, oh, okay, that goes right into that. That makes sense. And also makes the relationship between Patry and Vengeance interesting.
Yeah. I'll say real quick, if next chapter happens and these three dudes showed up just so Asta the Black Ghouls could beat them because they're still evil, I'm going to be furious. I'm going to be like, what was the point? They were dead! So we'll see what happens.
So, with that said, let's move on to One Piece. Chapter 912, Amigasa Village. We get a sweet color spread to start things off. Sports kind of Olympics? Not Olympics, because Zora's playing baseball. A sports festival thing. Whatever. With all the Straw Hats doing different stuff. I love that when Frankie is playing basketball, he's in his tank form for some reason.
I never noticed. That's fucking great.
That's it, the treads at the bottom. And, you know, Zora's got the 3 bats. A lot of little details like that. Last time, Otama had just told Luffy that she was waiting for Ace to return to Wano because they had made a promise together, and also she's poor and can't eat, so she's been poisoned because she drank from the poisoned river where there's factory runoff. So Luffy clarifies at the start of this, he's like, hey, when you say you're waiting for Ace, do you mean Porcas D. Ace? And she's like, oh, you know him? And Luffy's like, yeah, he's dead. Very just like, he's dead. Ace is dead. And immediately Otama's like, no, you're a liar! He passes out over it. And the old man, the Tengu Mask, who had been confronting Luffy earlier, is like, come on, how could you say such a thing to her, even if it's the truth? I was like, well, yeah, but Ace isn't going to show up if she keeps on waiting for him because he's dead. She's like, well, there's a better way to tell her. How do you know sense of sensitivity?
Luffy's like, nope.
Nope, I'm Luffy. And we're introduced to the guy as Tenguyama Hitetsu, a katana blacksmith and cute girl Kokeshi doll collector. Those are his titles.
That's fair enough.
But he says that he is Hitetsu, and he too has been awaiting someone for a very long time. Hitetsu is seemingly he is part of the line of blacksmiths that deal with Kitetsu and Kotetsu, because he says specifically that he actually specifically mentions a master Kotetsu who had crafted a sword that he has there, which we'll talk about later. But he gives a lot of explanation of, some of the stuff that's going on. How Wano has fallen basically into ruin because there was, a guy named X Drake who attacked the village. The 5 samurai were wiped out. The buildings were destroyed. And now only the flower capital, where the Shogun Orochi resides, that is the only place in the entire land that still flourishes. Everywhere else is a lawless wasteland, mostly controlled by Kaido.
Fair enough.
since that point, Ace and his crew arrived in the village, and they just washed up on shore the same way that Luffy and the Thousand Sunny did, and they took that as an opportunity. They took all their food and water so that they could survive. They tied up all the pirates. But once we had eaten their food, the pirate captain easily broke out of his ropes. We feared retribution, but all he said was, "Where can a guy go to get some good dessert?" After all of that, our lives have been saved by those shipwrecked pirates. Ace's group stayed with us for several weeks. And Otomo was very fond of them. And he was like, that makes sense. And so he asked, like, hey, is there a doctor I can take her to? And food and water, because I want to go and take her and help her. Meanwhile, he's putting on a kimono and puts some of his hair up in a top knot. And he's like, oh, cool, kimono, sweet. I also like the samurai armor and helmets and stuff. And Hangu says, what fool would wear such things on a normal occasion? He says that he can't go into town by himself for reasons. So he's got to have Luffy do it. He's got to have take Otama to the doctor himself. And you'll have to borrow the money for it somehow. And then the food and care will be free. So Luffy's like, all right, well, I'm going to borrow this sword too. And now I look like a samurai. Okay, here I go. And he says, no, don't take that sword. It's cursed. It is Kitetsu II in the same line as Zoro's cursed sword that he got all the way back where he like tossed it around his arm and it circled around his arm and didn't cut it off.
That's the one that's gone, I believe.
No, the one that's gone. I actually looked this up.
It's the other one he got down there. The
one that he got as an extra that the sword shop owner just gave him, just threw it in as well. That one was destroyed, and he had to replace it with the samurai ghost one's sword.
Yeah.
So, there's a brief little reintroduction, like, the famed swords. Among the countless weapons in the world, these are forged by celebrated masters, the 12 supreme grade swords, the 21 excellent grade swords, and the 50 fine grade weapons. And Luffy just kind of looks down at the sword as he's running. I was like, that name sounds familiar. These fucking idiots. Itetsu tries to stop him briefly, and he's like, no, I'm still going to take the sword. He's like, no, you can't take it. It's like, okay, then I'll trade it for your katana. No, this one's famed as well, and I don't want to carry that one. It's cursed. Okay, well, bye. They hop aboard the lion dog and start riding off towards the capital. I do like the little detail that while he's carrying Otama on his back, she's wearing his hat. It's like, oh, that's nice.
Question. If she's so hungry, why can't she just like pop off some of her dumplings and feed them to herself?
That's not how that works.
That should be how it works.
I know. I'll eat my own leg.
Well, she has a dumpling fruit or something.
Well, I think that the problem would be, it might quiet her stomach briefly, but it wouldn't provide her with any actual sustenance is the problem. Also, I think that her dumplings are specifically to control people, so maybe they don't actually have any nutritional value.
Fair enough.
So she's still very upset at Luffy as she wakes up. He's like, no, Ace is going to come back. It's like, no, come on. He died in that war. And she says, no, I made him a promise. And we get a flashback again to a conversation where Ace was getting ready to set off from Wano. And he's said, like, no, you can't come with me. You're only 5 years old. But don't worry, we'll be back and I'll have a bigger crew with me. Well, then will you let me join? He's like, well, look, a pirate's got to be strong. If you're a bewitching kunoichi the next time I come here, then I'll take you along. And one of the other pirates is like, does she really need to be bewitching, Ace? It's a good point. It's like, she's going to be like 9 when that happens. What's wrong with you, Ace? I think that he just kind of like threw it in there. It's like, if you're an awesome, mysterious, beautiful kunoichi,
Yeah.
But, yeah. And she's very upset with Luffy. She's pounding on the back of his head and like stretching his cheeks out from behind him. Like very little kid way of doing it, but it's, funnier because Luffy's face can stretch like that. And she of course is like, you don't know what Ace was like. You don't know how much it hurt me. He wouldn't die like that. Just stop it. Stop punching me. Stop it. Ow. Oh. But Then they come across the wastelands outside the village. And he immediately sees these animals chasing each other around. He's like, oh, a tiger, a boar, a sharkadile. What?
A sharkadile, Nick. I think that's pretty self-explanatory.
And so Luffy's like, oh, why don't we just eat that? And Thomas says, well, all the samurai who are powerful enough to do that have been captured, turned into bandits. Also, the animals who drank the contaminated water are poisonous for people who eat them. Ah, but they look so tasty. Oh, fuck that factory. I can't eat these tasty looking animals. Otama starts to worsen again because of the poisoned water. And so Luffy is rushing around. He hears some yelling going on. He hears specifically, Eek, please forgive me, and Yahahaha, wait up, woman. And so Luffy turned and is like, wait up, woman? Is that Sanji? It's probably a bad sign.
That's the thought process Luffy has towards Sanji at this point.
But he pretty quickly goes like, okay, that's not Sanji, probably not. And he sees from a distance, like, the guy harassing the woman get beaten up and defeated. And the woman's like, oh, thank you, sir. Like, oh, no, I just wanted their booze, verily. And Luffy eventually realized, like, hey, that's Zoro! Zoro! And sure enough, yeah, Zoro's gotten away from the people who were trying to get him to commit seppuku. He's looking all awesome in his long-ass kimono with the swords at his side. And Luffy, like, glomps him. Just pops down onto him. Blomp! They start eating some of the meat that Zoro has. And Zoro's like, yeah, you can just take as much fish and meat as you want around here. It's a free-for-all. No worries about food. And Luffy says, well, hang on. You better be careful. The water around here is poisonous. So the meat and fish is like this one are poisoned too. And Zoro says, huh, no wonder my stomach hurts. What a fucking throwback to when, like, they were on their own and they just couldn't feed themselves, and thus they, like, lucked out and punched a seagull that was passing overhead. These two fucking idiots. But holy shit, who should come across them at this moment but Basil Hawkins and a couple of other people on the weird snake-looking mounts. And he clearly realizes, Zorojiro and his companion. You must be the one who I was sent to investigate on Curry Beach. I've lost 2 of my men and 1 baboon, so you 2 are 98% likely to have done it, but that does not matter. Your choice in Wano is clear. Join the mighty or scramble and run in fear. And so Zoro and Luffy get ready to fight after one last quick little exchange where Zoro says, hey, Kinemon said not to cause a fuss. Luffy's like, all right, then obviously we'll have to apologize to him later. Interestingly, Luffy looks like he's going to use the sword.
Yeah, I'll be curious. It'd be kind of cool. I don't know. I'm super pumped for this. I'm really excited to find out what happens like in the next chapter or so. I love Hawkins. He's like one of my favorite like supernovas and characters I've been waiting to kind of see in action. So I'm hoping we get something from him next week.
Really fun.
One Piece is in next week's issue.
A lot of really funny moments in this chapter. I did really dig it, and it was entertaining as well. I do, on a more serious note, really like the relationship we saw between Otama and Ace, because that draws a parallel between Luffy and Shanks. That relationship that they had where Luffy was desperate to join the crew and he was like, yeah, you're too do when you're stronger and older. So I like that they've got that additional element too. And we're getting a female character who isn't just another Nami. So
true. She could grow up into a Nami though.
She could. But for the time being, she's much more of a kid than anything else. All right, and that's going to do it for Weekly Manga Recap. Let's name our favorites this week, Chris. Favorite series and MVP.
I guess I think I give it to One Piece and Zoro. I mean, it's not like I'm giving it like, no, we're crazy entertaining, but I think those are the ones I maybe remember most fondly.
I think we're going to give it to One Piece as well. Just, a really fun chapter. But I'm also going to give it to, even though it wasn't her chapter, I'm going to give it to Iruka. Like, it should have been more of an Haruka heavy chapter, but she has so many great reactions in it that, I mean, really did like it. I like, just seeing all the different expressions she makes, and then, they're just very non-committal. I was like, oh, they're both boys, it's fine.
Yeah. Let's love that answer.
She has a lot of great lines in this chapter, so. All right, everyone, that is going to do it for Weekly Manga Recap this week. We want to thank you guys for joining us here on smashcast.tv/RoloT and twitch.tv/RoloT, where we record the show generally Thursdays at around 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to keep updated on things, you can follow us on our social media accounts. On Twitter, at WMR Podcast is the podcast account, at RoloT and at Nick F. Time are your hosts' accounts. Be sure to check out our past episodes on weeklymangarecap.podbean.com. Subscribe to us on iTunes, subscribe to us on YouTube. Leave a comment and rating. Help out the algorithm. Help us to defeat our eternal rivals, the woodworkers, and become kings of the hobby section. If you would like to send us feedback, ask us questions for a future Q&A episode, or suggest future manga for us to read, you can send all that stuff via email to weeklymangarecap@yahoo.com, or join the Weekly Manga Recap Discord and use the appropriate chats for that. The recommendation that I picked out for next time for us to read is, what is this thing called? It's got a very long title.
That's a good sign.
I'm going to use the English title, Why Can't I Get a Girlfriend, which is much simpler.
Okay.
It's about a 16-year-old who is frustrated about his inability to get a girlfriend, and apparently it is a relatively short series that's a shonen comedy romance thing.
Gotcha.
The actual title is very, very long, and I'm not confident about my ability to actually pronounce it all. So
fair enough.
We are going to sign off here. Thank you guys for supporting us on Patreon. Your support allows us to create all sorts of bonus content for you guys to enjoy. Thank you to Steve Man, our talk artist, and thank you to Infamous Planet for the fun stuff you do. And thank you to Chris. I guess do you want to talk a little bit about the thing you did earlier this week?
Oh, yeah. I put together a bonus pod. I recorded it with Brennan, our good friend. It is a special bonus pod, trying out a new format, a potential show. It is I don't have a name for it right now, but it is, I created 3 crossfix, and I basically present them to Brennan, and he evaluates them, and he lets us know which one gets chapter 2. I wanted to go with the 4th one. I didn't have time to finish it. I will let you know that the 4th one was going to be a One Piece Garfield Godzilla crossover. Where Odie was going to eat the kaiju fruit, Godzilla, and they were going to have to beat up a giant Odie. I didn't get to do that one, but there's 3 other ones. Very fun. I'll note that one was particularly most well received, so I think that one will be in there, but it's super fun. You guys definitely check it out.
Yeah, that is available to our $5 backers on Patreon.
Yes, it should be up very soon, too.
And that is going to do it then. So thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Yes. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.